So now I'm going to be brief, but this is the fun part. This is contracts, which everyone loves. So I did want to introduce myself. I'm Kevin Woody. I'm a contracting officer at Department of Interior. We also have Will Gavin, who's a contracting officer at Department of Interior. This program is really special. It gets 2 contracting officers. So, but we will be the main point of contacts that you're going to interact with. IARPA and DOI partnership for quite a while. I think we've done work for you guys for about 15, 20 years since contract support. Will and I are COs for several programs, existing programs in IARPA. So we're very familiar with the process and how their systems work together. You see this theme pretty much several times throughout the day. The BAA is the final authority. There's going to be a lot of things said on the slide that are assumptions that we've done through the process in the past, but the BAA will be the final authority. BAA will be posted on sam.gov. That will be through DOI. We'll post it. And of course, that's the part about the authority. Just want to make sure that's clear. The BAA. We're going to use FAR Part 35, which is the research and development using a scientific board. And I think it's already been outlined how they plan on breaking out the different option periods for the contract, potential contract. Of course, the government will reserve the right through the BAA to award all, some, one, or none of the BAA responses. I'm going to go through some general. I don't want to get too detailed with the BAA. But there will be a couple things that are standard that you're going to see that I'm just going to highlight for your knowledge. There is going to be a page limitation. So you're going to see that in BAA. Pay attention to that. That's always something we have to follow pretty closely. There's going to be required documents in the BAA for attachments. We'll provide as much detail on that with the BAA, with giving you templates to work with. Pay attention to obviously the due dates. And we'll go through what some of those expectations are in a few minutes. Eligibility information. This is more for just transparency, just to let you know how IARPA has interacted with these programs in the past. Some of the people that are not eligible are other government agencies, federal funded research development centers, university affiliated research centers, and then any special relationship with the government that could give them privileged or proprietary information or equipment or real property that would benefit them in a program. Foreign entities may participate, but only as a US-based team. I'm not going to read this to you, but also in doing so, all foreign participation must comply with the necessary non-disclosure agreements, security regulations, export control laws, anything that's a governing statute for them. Again, we're going to use the sam.gov for releasing. The BA we anticipate to be out for approximately 30 to 45 days. That can vary, but pay attention to when we send that out and what our deadlines are for that. The proposal submittal process is a little different with IARPA. They have their own submittal process, and it's called Ideas. If you've never done it, the sam.gov location and IARPA's website, I believe, actually has a link, and we'll provide that in the BAA. But you're providing your proposal, you're submitting it through Ideas. There is a little bit of a tricky part to that, so we recommend that you got to get registered for that. I would recommend you do that at least a week before you're going to do your proposal. And also, don't wait to the last minute to submit in Ideas in case there's some type of hiccup with submitting it in there. You should only submit one version, which would be your final version. We've had to deal with some things with connection problems in the past, so don't wait to the last minute to submit an Ideas. This is a general, just so you understand how the evaluation process works. There's really 3 steps that go through this. And again, the details will be in the BAA, but our first step is to make sure when it's submitted that you are following the conformance of all the BAA requirements. So it's kind of a go, no-go type of scenario there. The second step is actually with Adam and his evaluation group, and that is a technical selection. The one thing I want to highlight that is that we're comparing your proposal against the requirements of the BAA, not against other proposals. And also during that second step, which may be slightly different than usual, is we are not asking for a cost proposal at time of submitting your proposal for the BAA. We actually do that after the second step. So we do want you to do a cost estimate. Obviously, in the technical, in order to answer it properly, you're going to have a pretty good structure of what your cost will be, but we're not asking for a full-blown technical or a cost proposal at that time. After technical selection from IARPA, we then, at that point, DOI will reach out to those individual selectees and ask for a final cost proposal. So not everyone will submit a cost proposal, unless we award to everyone that's submitted, of course. Again, it highlights that we're using FAR Part 35 and that we're reviewing the evaluations done against the BA requirements, not against individual comparisons. So I'm going to go through a couple areas that usually are a part of the BAA. There is forms that are going to be attached for any organizational conflict of interest. That's not uncommon for us to deal with something that way. We will require or ask for a mitigation plan if you do have an organizational conflict of interest. And of course, the reason we're doing that is, as FAR Part 5, is to prevent any type of bias from judgment and unfair competition advantage. In general, IARPA prohibits contractors from currently providing any type of CETA support or T&E to actually participate as a performer on the contract. As Adam pointed out, IARPA encourages publication. It is an unclassed environment. There is one aspect that they do ask for, and it'll be outlined in the BAA, is that IARPA always would like a courtesy copy prior to publishing. One of the other requirements is an academic institutional acknowledgement letter. The executive order requires this. So any academic institution needs to provide that to us during the proposal process. Intellectual property. So the anticipation here is that we are going to get unlimited government rights. There is forms associated with this for you to identify if you are giving us any IP rights assertions, but that'll also be clearly identified in the BAA. These are the evaluation criteria that we've used in the past. I think we're going to end up using the exact same ones. These could change. Do pay attention to that in the BAA. Overall scientific and technical merit, effectiveness of proposed work plan, contribution and relevance to the IARPA mission, relevance experience, resource realism. Again, I'm highlighting here just to let you know, we will do the technical evaluation without the cost proposal, full-blown cost proposals, and we will request that later if you go through that selection process. I put Will and I as the point of contact. Right now, we are in pre-solicitation phase, so communication is pretty open right now. Obviously, that's what we're here for today. Once we release the BAA, once the BAA is posted on SAM.gov, communication needs to come through these two channels. It's very important that you are no longer reaching out to, and I know some of these communities are small, reaching out directly to Adam and talking to him about this scenario, this BAA. So during that time, it's very important that you limit your communication. Most of the time, we'll end up routing those questions through to Adam, but all communication needs to go through here. And this helps us ensure the integrity of the acquisition process. Once we post the BAA, again, we're saying a 30 to 45 day window is what we're anticipating. I just wanted to give you how that would probably lay out. Let's say we are anticipating a release of the week of the April 21st to the 25th. Typically, we have about a 2-week period where we are asking for any questions, things we need to address, whether you have them about the technical or even the process of the BAA. You ask for questions, and then we give you answers. Usually, give a 2-week window there, and then that gives you chances to either respond or react to those questions, change whatever you need to do in your proposal, and then it gives you time to and put the final proposal. That's really all I have. Is there any questions? I know it's very broad, but right now this is probably the best we can give you for details. Got a question?
Conservative.
Adam says it's conservative.
I want April 1st.
Yeah, he's pushing me for tomorrow. I would like to beat that. Let me put it that way. But that is our hope. Yes. Now, yeah, government shutdown. Obviously, those are all different scenarios. Something like that happens, but that is our goal or better. So I will tell you that. Any other questions?
So a question came up. There we go. So I did request that we kind of draw the line at 11 a.m., which is where we are now. We're pretty much right on track according to our schedule. I have a couple of note cards with handwritten questions. Thank you very much. But the email address in question was on a different slide, so I couldn't have that posted up. So if you still have questions that you would like to submit, here's the email address. If you need to write that down or send it, you have your laptop. It's the one that the original announcement was sent out with. So it's just the email alias specific for this program. So, Adam, do you have anything else before we?
WebEx questions?
WebEx questions are being gathered by Halem, and she is remote attendance, and Jose. So we have people on our team monitoring all of those, assembling the questions. So you can either submit your question via WebEx chat, via the email alias that is here, or via note card. Yeah.
Email alias here, you have a dash, and on the one in the message, you have a dot.
Use the message. Use the message. Thank you for that. I thought I copied and pasted, but apparently maybe there was a string.
This one wrong?
Yes. So the difference is
DNI dot IARPA. Now I got DNI dash.
so I thought I did a copy and paste. The email alias, of course, works. So that is a typo right there. DNI dot IARPA. So, all right. So we're going to stick with our schedule, which means that we are going to essentially be taking a break for schedule says 90 minutes, 12:30. We have this room all day for lightning talks. In the afternoon, you can leave your bags here. Somebody will be here all day. You can leave your bags, you can leave your laptop, you can leave your jackets, you can basically come and go from this room as you please. And we will essentially take a break, and we will assemble your questions and get some answers for you. All right, thank you.
Okay, everybody. Before I go through the Q&A, I just want to point out two things, kind of a recurring theme in the question. So let me just state two things. One is there's something called the NGen API. Okay, the NGen API, just like it sounds, is an interface with the test bed. Okay, so whatever your frameworks are, so in TA1, it has to interact with the NGen API, right? So if you're sending out samples to the radio, there's a standard there that it has to follow. Okay, that's just a given. TA2, same thing, right? But now when we prompt your TA2 machine and it creates blocks that we're going to daisy chain together, it also must interact with the NGen API, okay? So that's the API. That's how the radios interact, that's how your solutions interact with the test bed. Then we have something called the lexicon. The lexicon is how we interact with your solutions. So that's the objectives and the prompting, okay? So when we talk about how does your solution consume objectives, that's the lexicon. When we talk about prompting, does it need to be natural language? What is the modality? That's the lexicon, okay? So just so we're all clear on that. API, interact with the test bed, lexicon, it's how we interact with you. Okay, so that's the first thing. The other thing is questions about, does it have to be novel? Does it have to be unique? What if we have a bank of signal processing blocks that humans have come up with? Can we just daisy chain them together and create, any number of waveforms for you that way? So the answer is we can't. We're not going to force you to use AI ML. We can't force you to do anything. Any solution we will accept that is viable to satisfy the metrics of the program. That's very important. So anything you come up with that you propose must be able to satisfy the metrics of the program. And I just need to say that the scenarios we're going to throw at you kind of preclude pre-existing waveform solutions. Okay, that's how we're not going to tell you have to do it. What we're going to do is when we test you, we're going to test you to make sure that that comes out that way. Right. So when we're not going to tell you have to learn and be intelligent, but when we test you, you have to learn and be intelligent. Right? That's kind of how it works. Okay. All right. So I guess I just read them as is. Okay. Will it be correct to infer from the statement? This presupposes that no feedback channel, even a low rate feedback channel, is available or should be proposed in the performance solution. That since no feedback channel is allowed, nodes cannot receive explicit acknowledgement or error corrections. So just to be very clear about the feedback channel, you can do all the feedback you want. You have to, right? How else are you going to learn, right? If the two nodes aren't talking to each other, right? When we say no feedback channel, we mean no side channel. There's no cable connecting to the two radios together that you'll just give you a kilobit per second or something over. That's what we mean by feedback channel. Absolutely, the receive node or node 2 or whatever you want to call it can access the channel and can talk with the transmitter. Absolutely. Okay. Can IARPA clarify what is meant by immediate knowledge of the waveform objective? If I understand what you're saying, we will not give teams a list of objectives we're going to use. We're not going to say scenario 4 has these 5 objectives. Go give us a solution that works for that, right? Solutions have to be general. You will not be given the objectives until the moment of, right? So we will give your solutions the objectives. We won't give you the objectives. You don't know. I've given a list of some common objectives that we probably will use. That should be enough to get you going. For TA1, can you please clarify the extent to which waveform generation should leverage general RF structures, fundamentals of a given media, known physical constraints, et cetera, et cetera? That's up to you. You don't know what environment you're going to be placed in. So I don't know how much it will help you to have some sort of model of that environment, but it's up to you. Are there specific hardware constraints you have in mind for final phase? This was also a common question. So far, what we have planned is we have a hardware virtualization. So we have a large Lambda cluster that's going to be running Engine. And then what we'll do is we will virtualize the available resources to you. Okay, so the idea is at the phase 1, maybe you have the equivalent of a server. Phase 2, you have the equivalent of a laptop. Phase 3, you have the equivalent of some embedded system, but it will all be virtualized. Our solutions based on integrated communications and sensing allowed and or desired. I guess what I'm going to say is you have access to whatever sensors the nodes have. So when we talk about channel observations, the API is going to give you the ability to sense the channel through some TDMA access. That's the answer. You have access to whatever we give you through the API. What is the expected timeline for RFP and submission dates? Just referring to the DOI slides for that. Is that good? Okay, see the DOI slides, they address it there. Are there approximate ROM of funding allocated for each TA? Again, IARPA will decide the funding level based on available budget and number of teams and your ROM and so on. But no, I'm not going to tell you how much you should propose. TA1 says you can't use a pre-trained model and that the model learns through epochs, which is the waveform discovery phase. Let me just stop the question there. It's a long question. Yes, you can use pre-trained models, absolutely. So if TA1, if you want to pre-train it to some certain level of intelligence that you think is general enough to work in any environment and then hand it over to us, there's nothing else. You can do that. It doesn't have to start from scratch every time. However, I might give you an objective we call invariance or variance. So the idea is I run you once, you come up with a waveform, I grab those samples and I give you an objective not to be like that ever again. Okay, so as you're coming up with a new waveform, we do the inner product or some other mathematical function to come up with a number that tells us how similar are you to this other waveform over here, right? And maybe we want you to be similar to it, or maybe we don't want you to be similar to it. I don't know. But we'll let your solutions know in the moment. The figure with the T&E environments show 2 engine nodes only. I suspect the environment will look different for phase 2 and 3. Sure, we might add additional nodes to the scenarios. Maybe we give you 3 nodes, maybe we give you 4 nodes with some configuration, and you need to generate waveforms for each of them in the moment. To be clear, for TA1, we cannot use a predetermined bank of 5 waveforms that are intelligently selected. Okay, this is related to what I was saying before. You can submit whatever you want, but what I'm going to do is take your submission and think of the scenarios that I plan to throw at you. Does your solution satisfy the needs that we're going to test it against? For TA1, what programming languages our engine code need to be in? Does it matter? Again, doesn't matter. Just has to work with whatever API that we come up with. Another question about feedback. We'll skip it. Will all engine nodes always have the same objectives given to them? No. Or is there an expectation that engine nodes can simultaneously have different objectives? Yes. The example I gave you was acoustic down, RF up. Obviously, they're going to have different objectives. Specifically, bandwidth can't be the same with RF and acoustic. You can't have a 10 megasample acoustic channel. So if bandwidth's an objective, they're obviously going to be different. Does the program envision FCC objectives being imposed? No. Is Doppler in play as part of the communication challenges? Yes, and what I want to say is we might virtualize channel effects. So on your radios, we might have our own block that we do crazy things to your waveform and that you have to overcome, okay, including inducing Doppler virtually, which then goes over the channel though, okay? And when I say anything, I mean I can do anything I want, right? I can turn all your 6s into 3s or something, right? Why the point doesn't matter, right, guys? That's why this is so fun. I can do whatever you want, as long as I'm consistent about it. I can do whatever I want at the very end of your processing chain before it goes out the antenna, and you should learn. You should be able to learn through it. Are TA1s allowed to heavily pre-train their generative AIs? Yes, we talked about that. Feel free to pre-train it all you want. How are objectives evaluated? Are we told the bare minimum, like meet it, don't meet it? No, we'll give you the number, right? So if the objective is peak to average power ratio, right? We'll calculate it and give it to you, or you can calculate it and give it to yourself, right? During scenarios, that's fine. Are transmission mediums that will be used across the phases already determined or still decided? I'm not going to tell you, except for RF. It's too obvious. I wanted the program to be, I'll never tell you anything. You guys have no idea, right? You have no idea what we're going to do. We're going to do RF. We're going to do RF. But you don't. After that, you don't know. After that, we underwater. Oh man, and we're going crazy, guys. We're flickering lights with people walking on the. I mean, it's just crazy. So, yes, RF. After that, I won't tell you. Sky's the limit. Okay, answer that one. Are objectives network objectives, physical objectives, or both? It can be both, right? So if the objective is bandwidth, that's a physical objective. If the objective is, if you step on a primary user, you get dinged somehow, right? That's more of a MAC level decision, network level decision. Both. Are the critical waveform objectives symmetric across the channel? No, same question before. We might give different objectives to different nodes. To what extent is training over unusual channels outside of T&E test desirable to the program? You can do whatever you want, but I don't think it's advantageous to being accepted, right? You know, you're gonna go in the ocean and put this thing underwater. Yeah, that's great and all, but that's not how we're gonna test it. So I don't think it's advantageous. But interesting. If I transmit within a certain bandwidth, how much power can I expect to receive within a comparable bandwidth at the receiver? How nonlinear will the channels be? Okay, this goes back to what I was saying. You know, we will corrupt your samples in a certain way. However, we're not going to do so much that nothing is received at the other side, right? Right. Kind of a core principle of engine is that you are receiving energy at the other side. Right? It's not magic. I have to explain this sometime to the front offices of the world. Not magic. It's intelligent. It's not magic. Power has to get from one side to the other, or we're not exchanging information. So power will arrive at the other side. For spatial steering, are we considering only electronic steering or any physical mechanisms? Okay, so this, we don't know the environments yet, so I can answer that question. I think they're asking is, can we rotate the antennas or whatever? We don't know yet. But it brings up an interesting point. It's something I call the data type. So your solutions have to handle the data type, meaning what are you outputting to the transducer, and then what are you receiving on the other side, okay? So for a point-to-point link with single antenna, maybe it's IQ samples, megasample per second, right? So the data, that's the data type. The data type is 32-bit IQ samples, whatever, but a single stream of them. If I give you two antennas, right? Now all of a sudden it's two 32-bit samples at a megasample per second, right? Or whatever bandwidth I choose, okay? Or 3 or 8. The point is, your machine has to be generic enough to accept any data type that I might give it, okay? So if it's an acoustic channel, right? Maybe it's a little different. Maybe it's voltages and it's much shorter. If it's piezoelectric buzzers, right? Maybe it's you know, however we drive it, right? So the point is your machine has to output certain data type and accept a certain data type. So don't get pigeonholed into just, you know, 5 megahertz channels and so on, right? It has to be generic. All right, compute resources. We talked about virtualization. TA1 and TA2 seem to like competing solutions. I love that. Is the intent to down select between the TAs or within each TA, just within? Even the scoreboard scenario will be the same scenario. You won't be compared across TAs. No comparison across TAs. More about human design. Good, a lot of repeats. Oh, great question. What exactly is a prompt? Are we expected to handle natural language text input, or will we provide a list of options to the user and ask for selections and specific data range inputs? Okay, fantastic question. This probably is the last question. Sorry, not that I'm going to read, but the last open-ended question for the program is the lexicon for TA2, right? How are we going to interact with your solutions? How are your solutions going to spit out things that create waveforms, right? That's an open question. Currently, I'm leaning against natural language. I do not, I don't want you to give me a 2-page text description of a great error correcting code, right? But what are we going to do with that? Like, is JHU going to then type it up for you and into Python and try to put it on the radios? That doesn't seem like a good way to do things. Now, natural language for the input, maybe. Do we tell the machine? Do we tell engine? Oh, you're going to be in an acoustic channel. You know, we need you to be at 1 megahertz per second. You know, that's interesting. So English as an input is interesting. But we're where we are right now. Again, wait for the BAA. The BAA will be the final word. But as you think about this, think about proposing your own lexicon. Okay, so as part of your framework, you say you tell us this is how we can interact with your solution, and this is how the output of the solution is going to interact with the API on the radios eventually. Okay, so for now, think of it like that. Another question about lexicon. Can we load custom FPGA code? No, cheaters. Whoever you are, you know, that's the only reason people want to load FPGA is because they want to cheat. I'm joking. I like you. Okay. Is the full protocol expected to be mostly or all software? All software. Yeah, we do no hardware. No hardware in this program at all. Zero hardware. I don't want to waste them. Hardware is a waste of money. I was part of a startup once. There was a software side and a hardware side. Never hardware. Never be part of a hardware startup. The worst thing. Worst 2 years. For TA2, do we know the prompts objectives before testing? Nope. You do not know the prompts or the objectives. Not until day of. For TA1, is there an upper limit to the amount of latency and or jitter that we need to work with? Jitter is absolutely something that we could either naturally induce or intentionally induce into the system. Of course, we can add jitter. Latency obviously can be an objective as well, right? How long does it take for the bits to be received at the other side? Absolutely. And more about TA1 offline training variants. Good. Are there any special restrictions on commercializing technologies developed under engine, special export restrictions, classification levels? It just says here, throw DOI under the bus for this question. Question was, are there any special restrictions on commercializing technologies developed under engine? No restrictions. Go make money. Government purpose, right? Yeah, GPR, right? You mentioned for TA1 that the system will make use of epochs of training. Can we assume all radios have a common time base? You mentioned there will be precise timing. So that I asked the T&E guys, this is what they said. We have a GPS feed coming from the roof that we feed to a master octoclock. The octoclock is spread out to the numerous daughter boards. They try to have cables that are the same length, that are matched to the location of the antennas. 10 megahertz, 1 PPS. This one, okay. So,
You reserve the right to
make that worse.
use.
Yes. Do not rely on perfect timing or synchronization. A lot of questions about feedback. Oh, this is a good one. Again, this is multiple questions along the same lines. How are the dynamic inputs supposed to operate on TA2 solutions? So I know it feels like a little meta, but TA2, you're generating outputs that we're going to use. Those outputs themselves can be dynamic themselves, right? They can adapt to the channel, right? They just have to do it themselves. You do not have access to your framework during a scenario for TA2. Okay, so we don't have this giant like ChatGPT model with an antenna hooked up to it. That's not how it works. Okay. Once we prompt it and we receive the output, you're no longer connected to your solution. Okay, so whatever you produce, if it needs to be dynamic, it needs to be dynamic. What constitutes explainability for TA2? That's an interesting question. I don't know. Explainability is not a metric. Right? There's no metric for explainability. We think explainability will just happen by definition, right, through TA2 by generating all these processing blocks that need to be chained together. We can look at them individually. They can explain to us what they're doing. TA2's outputs are in response to prompts. So we know what we prompted and what you gave us, right? That kind of, by definition, is explainable, but it is not a metric, right? We will not quantify explainability. How should we account for NSA waveform evaluation transect? There's no intention of going down that path with NGen waveforms. Is there a preference for steganography, hiding in plain sight, etc.? No preference, but the objectives drive the waveform, right? So the preferences, we will tell you what the preferences are through the objectives themselves. If one of the objectives implies steganography, then yes, it's a preference. Is there interest in joining TA1 and TA2 solutions where a prompt-based waveform continually adapts? No, not in the structure of the program, but what I was saying before, a TA2 solution can be dynamic, but we don't want TA2 to spit out like a little baby neural network that you input on one for TA1. Like that's not the goal. We are not procreating AIs in engine. But now that I said it that way, it sounds really cool. It sounds really cool. We could do that, couldn't we? So TA2 makes TA1, we put TA1 against the other T1s. Yeah, follow-up program. Okay. What is the target number of performers for each phase? You know we're not going to answer that. Quite a few, actually. I fought for you guys during the new start pitch. How much funding is allocated for performers? Not going to tell you that either. Level of compute, again, we're virtualizing. Will a set of objectives be predefined for TA2? Nope. Given the objectives, will the waveforms be unique? That's up to you. Again, but uniqueness might be an objective itself. Or not unique. You guys, right? One or the other. We may want you to look like something, we may want you not to look like something. So it's up to us. Wouldn't it be more difficult to be more successful with a smaller model? Yes. But one of the questions we're trying to answer is intelligence versus model size, right? So while it would make it a more difficult program, if you're more intelligent because you have 10x number of model parameters, then that's what we want because you're more intelligent. Again, not a metric like explainability, but there's certain people who want that question answered. What's the intelligence versus processing, right? Is there a plateau? At some point, you stop being intelligent. So we're going to answer that, but just not as a metric in the program. Will all TA2 solutions have the same prompts? That's a good question. Even if in the BAA we come up with a lexicon and we say you have to follow this lexicon for prompting, doesn't mean we're going to get the same prompts to everybody because prompting is a two-way process, right? If you've ever played with ChatGPT, you have to go back and forth. So while the initial prompt may be the same, what you reply to us may not be what we want, so then we have to reply with another prompt, right? there's a game we're going to play with the TA2 solution, so it can't be the same for every solution. That's not possible. For TA2, is there a period of time when the system adapts online, or is it all trained offline? If no application, then how do we deal with the jammer? I think I've answered this. Right? There's no connection between your solution and the radios themselves, right? So as we're prompting you, we'll tell you about the jammer, right? We'll say, oh, hey, there's a jammer in this environment. So then you just need to come up with some sort of processing that handles whatever we prompt you with. Will there be spatial degrees of freedom? Yes, that's the data type I was talking about. Oh, this is a good one. Will the T&E framework be locally hostable or accessible before submitting to the T&E teams? I guess so what we've come up with is for TA2, if you want to host your own trained model, you can, right? So if you give us an API to interact with your some sort of web interface or something, you can do that. So you don't have to deliver the model itself. So you can host it yourself as long as there's a way for us to work with it. Or if you want, you can deliver us the trained model and then we'll run it ourselves. Whatever makes more sense to you. Are the hardware platform resources capabilities scaled to tactical solutions? Obviously, there's a lot of interest in tactical solutions. But no, we won't be doing it physically. We'll be doing it virtualized. Is there a benefit if the solution implements low observable techniques? Not unless it's an objective, and it can be an objective. It's security consideration. I mean, we are IARPA. Security is always a consideration, but it is an unclassed program in its entirety. Would a transition target program of record be a consideration? No, just the quality of your proposal. That's what we're going to go off of. Do you envision separate network, MAC, and PHY layers in the learned waveform? No for TA1, yes for TA2. But for TA1, remember TA1 is unexplainable, right? You just got to take care of everything, right? You decide where, when, how, what you're transmitting. We just send it out over the air. We don't care how you made those decisions, but TA2, yes. Right. So if we give you a specific MAC objective, it should be separately learned. Pretty painless. Can I open it up for 5 minutes just for any other questions? Is that okay? Okay. So do you guys have anything you just want to ask while I'm here? Or if I skipped yours and because I thought it was redundant and it wasn't redundant, go ahead and raise your hand and ask it. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the generic word lexicon covers both how we talk to you and then how you talk back to us with what we want. Doesn't necessarily need to be the same thing, right? It could be English in, Python out, right? English in, math out. I don't know yet. But just as you think about it, as you talk about it with your teams, and as you propose it, just call it the lexicon. Refer to it that way. Okay. Anything else? Awesome. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break. I used to work with this one Marine sergeant. He said, take a quick 5. I said, I don't know what quick 5 is. He says 5 minutes or whenever I'm ready to go, whichever comes first. So we're going to take a quick 5 for the rest of the lightning talks. And the rest of the afternoon, it's going to be basically for potential performers to have basically discuss what they can provide, what they capabilities they think they have or would be able to contribute. And to keep everything fair from a government perspective, all of the government is about to leave. So we're going to give them a couple minutes just so that they can gather their stuff. We're going to basically set back up for presentation mode. And so, yeah, so we're just going to take a couple minutes switching some of our AV stuff around. And I realize that we are probably the first time I've ever done a government event that's ahead of schedule. So give us a couple minutes to get our AV switched, and then we'll get started in with lightning talks. Thank you.